She's definitely an interesting one, this one. Hello there everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Josepher, and in today's Granblue Fantasy Relink video, we're going to be talking about the spirit spammer herself, Ferry. So Ferry is a very interesting character in GBR because the way that you're supposed to play her and the way that people actually play her are two very different things. So we're going to cover all of that with both her gameplay mechanics, but I'm also going to dive a little more into the advanced stuff because it might make or break the reason you want to play her. So let's go over basic game plan first. So Ferry is a long-ranged character with a large whip that's fairly slow in execution, but if you just press the square button, then you'll just get long-range attacks. If you hold the square button, then you'll get like a continuous whip move, and if you finish it with a combo, you'll summon one of her 3 spirit animals. The game actually refers to 3 spirit animals, but Ferry actually has 4, and sometimes it will refer to them together, and we'll get to that when we get to the skills, but just bear in mind that she actually has 4, one of which is a duo spirit, so just keep that in mind. Her triangle attack Onslaught uses her spirits up to augment the damage that she does from this, and also uses those up. By using a link attack or some of her skills, you can also get all 3 of her spirits up, and just by leaving them alone, you'll get continuous residual damage as well. Beyond that, she has very simple moves. Her aerial combo is very simple, and her aerial finisher is one that we're going to want to keep an eye out for, particularly in conjunction with her launch attack, which is done by pressing square as you jump up into the air. So you get that, and you get then the up-down finisher, as it were. Trust me, we will be coming back to this later. As I say, the role that Ferry is supposed to play in this game is one of an offensive support. Damage that's continuous and residual from a safe distance using the length of her whip and her spirit animals, whilst also providing things like slow, healing, regen, defense drops, dispels, things like that that are just assets to the party. Whether you decide to use her that way or not, though, is entirely up to you. And I know that you guys are probably wanting to know what I'm talking about when I talk about that, but let's go over the skills first so that when I do talk about the cheesier way to play Ferry, we have context. So let's start by talking about the skills that I do use with Ferry, and I'm going to be really honest with you. When I use Ferry, I will typically use the cheese method of using her because it does make farming significantly quicker, and there's a lot of farming and grinding to be done in this game. And as you well know through my videos, if there's an ability for me to grind less, I'm going to take it. So let's go over the skills we use first, then I'll go over the other skills, and then we'll come back to how it all comes together to make her spammy. So first we have Purge Spirits, which summons all 3 of her spirit animals all at the same time with a high stun attack. Very useful. Honestly, even if you're playing her normally, I would use this just because having the ability to summon all of her animals at once gives you the ability to use her onslaught attack very easily and efficiently without actually having to do an awful lot. Then you have Strafe, which also summons all of her animals and gets them to start attacking continuously. Again, all it's going to do, high stun. It does lock you in position for the animation for it, so that's something you might want to consider. But you can just use this to summon the animals quickly and efficiently if you need a reason to do so. Then you have Umlauf, which will summon Beppo. So she has 3 skills, one for each of her spirit animals. And this one is a buff and a passive that gives her Stout Heart, so the ability to not take knockback or anything when she's taking damage. And also this kind of orb, like an option from, the old Gradius games, if you remember those, that just deals passive damage. And if we learn anything from Percival, passive damage is always a win. And then finally we have Hinrekten, which is a buff that depends entirely on how many animals you have. So with what I've got there with no animals, it doesn't actually do very much at all. But if I have all 3 animals out, you get attack boosted, crit rate boosted by 30%, supplementary damage, which is extremely useful for Ferry, especially if you're using the cheese method of using her, and invincibility as well. So all of those are going to come in handy. It's definitely something you want to use, but make sure you have all of your animals out before you do it. Now onto the skills that I don't particularly use. You have Blaues Gespenst, which summons up Fuji and Nicola, which are 1 animal. This is what I meant by the game referring to her having summoning multiple animals, where actually she's only summoning 1. But if you look, there's 2 of them on the board. And this does a defense drop and also a buff removal. I've not found buff removal to be particularly useful at any point in this game. However, that's not to say that it might not come in handy in the future with the likes of Lucilius or whatever comes out in May, or hopefully the game's popular enough that it'll continue to get support after that point as well. So who knows when it might be popular. Then you have Sikkim GG, which is the spell that summons GG, and it inflicts a slow. Slow is good, we like crowd control abilities, always very useful. I don't use this because I've geared my skill set particularly towards the jump attack cheese method of using Ferry, but there's definitely an argument to be had for this because the more crowd control you have in your party, the better. Pendel I really don't think very highly of. It's just a backdash that summons a couple of her spirit animals at the same time. It doesn't really do a huge amount beyond that, unfortunately, so I probably just wouldn't use this. And then finally you have Benediction, which is a AoE heal, but it also, depending on how many animals she has out at the time, can give her regen, defense, and attack boosts. I don't use this because, honestly, healing, certainly if you're in multiplayer, just isn't very useful. Everyone has potions, everyone should be carrying lots of them through Potion Hoarder. There's an argument to be had for it if you're playing a single player, but honestly, I'd rather just do more damage and just get through the fight as quickly as I can so that I don't have the need to heal. So what is the jump attack cheese method of playing Ferry and why is it so effective? Well, let's take a closer look at that. So the thing with Ferry is that she has a very, very powerful jump attack, in that all that really has to happen is you can do a launch attack, which you do by pressing light attack when jumping, so this, followed by her finisher. Doesn't look like much on its own. However, if you have all three of your spirits out, you've got your Umlauf buff up, so you've got Beppo go around dealing extra damage. You have your Hinrichten buff for supplementary damage, and if you've got it stacking with supplementary damage on top of what you're already doing, then you get even more damage out of it. You can literally just loop this over and over and over and over, only taking breaks to do link attacks, which will refresh your monsters as well, and you don't actually have to do anything else pretty much at all, and you can see how much damage I'm dealing in a very short space of time. And not only that, you can see how quickly my SBA gauge is maxing out. I have very little, if no, uplift on Ferry at this point in time, and I'm really quickly just buzzing through that gauge, and this, I believe, makes Ferry an extremely powerful farming character because you have access to be able to use SBAs as frequently as you want. And all I'm doing is pressing 3 buttons. And it's very powerful. It is, however, extremely dull, and I will pre-warn you of that now. So dull, in fact, that I actually ended up drawing a picture of Ferry, because I really like Ferry, and I think that if you play her normally, there's a lot to be said for her. Her damage isn't as high as some of the other characters, but I wanted to just turn attention to the fact that she's really cool, and that the cheese method isn't the only way to play her. Having the supplementary damage sigils on Ferry in addition to the ones that she gets from her buff, supplementary damage is a bit weird in that if it's a buff that's on her, it actually does stack with the sigil. So normally the attack that you would get from supplementary damage would deal 20% of what you normally get. However, if you've already got all of the buffs that you'd need from it, it actually does quite a bit more. And I've realized that I actually don't have the animals up, so I'm not showcasing it. It jumps from 20% to 50% instead of so it's quite a massive jump. But the main reason that you use Ferry for this is because of that SBA gauge. Bear in mind that every time you trigger an SBA, your party are getting 10% added to theirs. So if you're using this to farm characters, particularly Piet, who you want to skip damage phases and you want as much stun as you can physically get, using Ferry for that is gonna do a massive amount of wonders for you, but you are just jumping up and down and pressing 1 or 2 buttons continuously. In terms of builds, etc., my build for Ferry is very simple. I've got my damage cap 5+, which carry some attack stats, carry some guts, some auto revive, etc. I'm actually going off auto revive a little bit because the animation for auto revive is slow enough that I'd rather just use a revival potion. Making sure I've kept my crit rate at 100%, war elemental. Supplementary damage, as I've said, very, very important for Ferry, especially because you're using her own attacks. It doesn't count towards her spirit animals, I should point that out as well. Phantasm's Awakening, her legendary sigils are okay. Like, the fact that her pets deal more damage is useful, and they have a chance of inflicting attack and defense down on hit. Sure, we can take those. Phantasm's Harmony boosts the damage of Onslaught's final hit, and as it lands, it shortens Ferry's skill cooldowns. Sounds way better than it is. Onslaught is is very slow, and by the time you've gotten it off, you probably would have dealt more damage by doing a bunch of other stuff, even if you weren't necessarily using the cheese jump attacks. So I think that you could get rid of both of them realistically, but if you've got a Phantasm's Concord with a decent secondary stat, you could absolutely make use of that. So would I recommend Ferry to other players? Depends who you're asking. If you just want someone that's very simple in their execution and does one thing and does it extremely well, Ferry is a good pick. She's very powerful. She charges the SBA gauge extremely quickly because of the modifiers to her jump finisher. It's not the way she was intended to be played, but it's absolutely the most optimal way you'll see her being played. Typically, if you see Ferries being played at endgame, there's a good chance they're using that technique. Just keep an eye out for Ferries in the wild. You're probably going to notice this a lot if you haven't already done so. So if you want varied gameplay and like branching things that you can do, play her normally. But you'll probably find her damage isn't nearly as great as a lot of other characters. And if you do want her damage to be really high and still not as great as certain other characters, Ferry may not be the best choice, but that SBA gauge charge is really powerful. If you want to play her as a support character, the ability to do so is very much there. I personally don't think that she's somebody I would recommend to new players or people who have already established the characters that they like, but I did the pretty picture. Have you seen a lot of Ferries out in the wild? Do you notice a lot of the up, down, smash spam, the spirit spam indeed? Then let me know in the comments below, and let me know if this kind of way of playing a character is off-putting to you. Obviously, a lot of my information I get from places like Reddit or Twitter or just all sorts of places all over the internet, and I know this isn't a new technique by this point in the game's life cycle, which sounds like a weird word to say given the game's been out for 2 weeks, but here we are. People break games open. Let's just deal with it. And let me know what you guys think of all of that in the comments below. But if you're not sure, want to comment, what we're going to say today instead of algorithm, spirit spam. If you're not sure what to comment, comment spirit spam, because it does help me out as a content creator and I appreciate you for it greatly. So yeah, that's it for today's video. That is my character guide on Ferry. I do encourage people to try different things with her. There is still a lot of techniques, etc. being broken open in Granblue Fantasy Relink. Not that the game really needs it. It's like, by the time you get to this point, you're cracking final bosses in less than 2 minutes, so if you really want to min-max stuff, then maybe I'm not the best person for you to come to, but I try very hard to make this as digestible and easy for people who maybe are exploring characters to understand and just take away and go, oh, I want to play that person. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed what you've seen here today, consider leaving a like and a subscribe. I'm actually approaching 21,000 subscribers already, which is kind of wild. So thank you very, very much for that. This game has been massively beneficial for my channel, and I'm very grateful to the Granblue Fantasy Relink community. And then if you really enjoyed this content and you'd like to support the channel directly, then perhaps consider going onto my Patreon page, which is linked down in the description box below, and you can get artwork made by me, just like stuff like this. And you know, all title cards, all sorts of little benefits that you can have as a thank you for supporting the channel. And I'm still farming Terminus weapons at the moment over on Twitch, so if you want to find me on there or you want to join in the discussion on Discord, that's all linked to the description box as well. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you for the next one. Leave a comment for which character you'd like to see next. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.